Welcome to another episode of the Creative Power Hour. I'm your host, Marcus Whitney, and today our guest is my business partner, the venerable Vic Gatto.
I've never been venerable before.
I know.
That sounds old. That sounds old.
This is the one and only time
Yeah,
you get.
okay.
Well, dude, you're like my older business partner.
I'm only like 6 months older. I don't know about that.
Dude, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. We had a good board meeting today, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're finished off to the next 3 months.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. So I gave you a little download about how the show works.
Yep.
Start with the origin story. And I know yours pretty well, but I always learn.
That means you'll be able to ask follow-up questions.
That's right.
If I try to dodge it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So no lying.
Yeah.
Okay. Here you go.
Yes. We are transparent world.
That's right.
So my origin story? Is that what you want?
Yeah.
I don't know. I grew up in Boston, and my parents were working class folks. My dad was a football coach, and so I was the guy on the sidelines, the ball boy hanging around the team, and he was at pretty little Division III colleges, and it was a good life. They were sort of trying to build a life for their kids, and good. They taught me hard work, and you sort of have to work hard to get ahead and do for yourself. And then I went to college and, never really wanted to go back home that much. So I kind of have taken off from there.
So just when I think about Boston, there are a couple things I think about. I lived there for 4 years off and on. But two of the big things I think about are universities and sports. And so your dad was at the intersection of those two things. Yeah. And so I would imagine that meant there were at least people in your neighborhood who knew who he was, and had to kind of deal with that stuff.
Yeah, I had the same damn name.
Okay, all right.
So I'm the third. And he played for Harvard and was captain and on the undefeated Harvard team when Harvard still was good football, right? And in Boston particularly, Harvard was the thing. Mm-hmm. And so he was a local hero.
Yeah.
Which was good and bad.
Right.
Like I was super proud of him. And also I got pretty tired by the time I was a teenager about hearing about how great a person, a player, an athlete he was.
Yeah.
And so that was good and bad.
Yeah. Did you play football?
Yeah. So I played football at Amherst. I played in high school.
Okay.
And then I played Amherst. Every male in my family on my dad's side had gone to Harvard. And so my grandfather and his 3 brothers all went to Harvard. My dad and his brother went to Harvard. I was the oldest grandson. And on this track to go play football at Harvard. And it was just fucking miserable. I was not. I went and visited, and I had the same name. I played the same position.
Yeah.
It's just too much and not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I went to Amherst, which is in the western part of the state, smaller school. I could play football and lacrosse. And I'm 5'9", and not going to play pro. Right, so it was much more about having fun and doing my own thing.
Yep.
My dad was not at all happy about that, but it was a much better choice for me.
So there are some kids that, would love to be in that legacy and kind of feel like they have that layup. And, I hear what you're saying about not loving the small town hero bit, but, did you feel like you were supported to be who you wanted to be, or do you feel like you were really being pressured into being the third? Like, this is what you're gonna do. This is, you know what I mean? Did anyone give a shit what you wanted to do? When you were?
No, probably not.
Yeah, okay.
My dad and my grandfather and the whole family wanted their firstborn son to go to Harvard and play football for the Crimson. And people don't understand Harvard down here in the South,
right?
But it's not. It's the same thing where there's just different schools. Right? There's plenty of schools in the South where your granddaddy went to this school
Yep.
and your dad went there and you're going there, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
My mom was not interested in that. And so she wanted different things. She wanted me to be a doctor
Okay.
because she had to work hard in her life and they didn't have a lot of money and they were working 2-3 jobs and trying to like buy a vacation house or buy things that they wanted. And she, like a lot of moms, felt like having a doctor in front of your name was like a guarantee to the good life. Whatever the good life means, she thought that's what it was.
Right.
So she didn't care where I went, and she was supportive of me looking elsewhere, even happy to have me break away, but I had to be a doctor. And so that presented its own challenges. And my uncle he went to Harvard 3 years after my dad. And so he was much closer to like the godlike halo effect. And it didn't go that well for him. So like he was not strong enough to really be that vocal.
Okay.
But he pulled me aside and said like, you should consider some other things.
Right. Got it.
I mean, you work with me enough to know like I'm not that easy to push around. So like it took me a while, but eventually I wasn't going to go down a road I didn't want to go down.
Yeah. I mean, but you're a full-grown man now. I mean, when you're a teenager and you're in your parents' home and all this other kind of stuff, and it's influence.
You know, I needed them to pay for shit.
Right, exactly,
like
exactly.
Driving his car,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. So did you and your mom conspire around Amherst? Was that like the Great Escape? Was your mom like your accomplice in that path? And did you also study medicine at Amherst?
Yeah. So, Amherst is a liberal arts school.
Okay.
And so I was pre-med.
Pre-med, yeah.
But you have to pick something else. I was biology and economics because I liked business. But yeah, I mean, I went to Amherst thinking I was going to be a doctor. And I don't know if my mom and I conspired. I think that I really liked football and lacrosse. And I wasn't good enough. I wasn't as good as my dad.
Okay.
And the world had changed.
Yes.
Right, so like 5'9", kind of fast guy playing for Harvard. I could do it, but I wasn't going to be like a badass dominant guy that could also play lacrosse.
Right.
Like they were like, well, you can play here, maybe, and you know we want your dad to continue to be supportive.
Right.
But you're not doing anything else. Whereas Amherst, they were like, yes, come and you should play lacrosse and it'll be great. And they were actually recruiting me, which was just, felt better.
Yeah, of course,
right?
of course.
Anyway, so I got there and did the pre-med thing. And I actually really liked the science.
Okay.
But I did several internships and experiences where I got to see the actual practice of medicine. And, I mean, you know, but it's the same thing over and over again. Right, so I don't care where you are in the kind of chain. You can be the most like badass brain surgeon. Actually, the higher you get in the pecking order and the skill level, the narrower your focus is. Like you do fewer and fewer things.
Yep.
And so the first hip replacement surgery I saw is like life changing. I mean, there's blood everywhere and tools, and they're like cracking things open, and it's cool. And I loved it. And I did this orthopedic surgery internship for free, just like hanging around, delivering pizza at night because I had to make money. But I was watching stuff in the day, and it was great. But then by the second week, okay, I've seen all this. It's like now the second week, once in a while, there's something new, some change or something happens. But by the end of the summer, I was like, gosh, like I can do this thing. Like this is not that interesting.
Yeah.
And just like the learning curve was super steep, but it lasted not very long.
Yeah.
And I came back to school feeling like, gosh, I don't know. Like I don't think I want to be a surgeon like that. And so for a while, went to consider veterinary medicine because that's much more of a jack of all trades, right? Like you do whatever comes in,
Right.
you're doing.
Yeah.
And so kind of that winter and then the next summer, I spent time in a vet's office. And that was better, but it's sort of all the annoying stuff.
Right.
Right. So like, whatever, someone has a dog has an ear infection or fleas or a basic check. It wasn't,
and you have to deal with it.
You got to deal with it. Like that's
Yeah.
how you make money. It's like running a little small business. And so I was pretty depressed about the options in front of me. And so I graduated school, pretty well prepared for a career I no longer wanted. And so, I went through everything, organic chemistry, biochemistry, all the way through and graduated because my mom thought, that I should be quiet and go get my doctor's license and practice medicine because I'll make money.
Right.
Turns out she was wrong about that because
Yeah.
now I'm in the business and it's not that great of a career. But I finished that process and I graduated. And my dad said to me, super proud of you. This is a great accomplishment. You have 2 weeks to go get a damn job. And, he was saying it's fine that you're going to go find yourself and do something different. But I've paid for he paid for half the school. I've paid for half of this. And I had loans for the other half. And, you can't live in my house anymore. Mm-hmm. And I was not that happy about that. I'm not sure it was the best graduation gift, but it really did set me off on a trajectory that was useful.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't just hang around and do nothing or like navel gaze.
Yeah.
You got to pay rent.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I got a shitty apartment in Somerville and had to find a job quickly. Mm-hmm. And that was a good background to join a startup. So I literally joined. I didn't know what a startup was. Like I had been at this liberal arts school and pre-med track.
So I have to ask, what year is this?
93.
93. Okay. Yes.
In Boston.
Okay.
So, and that's important because
that's super important.
I joined the startup that was helping the buy-side mutual fund companies bring Windows-based technology to a trading desk. And they all had green screens, and we were bringing them better tools.
The future.
Yeah.
Really, you were bringing them the future.
The future. And I knew nothing about technology. Like, I had a Mac that I would write papers on.
Yeah.
And I played Tetris. But, there was no... I didn't know anything about technology.
Yeah.
And
You were studying medicine.
I was studying medicine.
Yeah.
But, liberal arts, I think, gives you a good background to be able to kind of BS your way through lots of stuff. I could write and I could process information. I'd go look up stuff.
Yeah.
And debate sort of things. And I don't lack confidence, as you know. And so so these two guys had founded a company, didn't have a name yet.
Okay.
And they were so one of them had been a headhunter for 20 years.
Okay.
Kind of full-time placement in Boston. And he was placing like CIOs and what was called MIS directors, which doesn't exist anymore, at all the financial market companies. And he had seen that, I don't know what the technology is going to be, but the effort it takes to build a new application or a new tool is significant. But then you don't need those really expensive, talented people around all the time. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of his clients were looking to outsource the development effort. Mm-hmm. And so he left the headhunting business and started a company to meet that market demand.
Okay.
And he had no idea what we were going to do. He hired a guy out of the automotive industry who knew about contract labor. And then he hired me to get the cokes and figure out what to do. Very quickly, they stuck me with the engineers. So it was my job to wrangle these software engineers, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And you know these guys. You used to be one of these guys. They like to work from like 4 p.m. till 2 in the morning
Right.
in dark rooms,
Yeah.
and they didn't really want to deal with a pissant college kid.
No.
But they were happy for me to take all the bureaucracy shit off them.
Yes.
And so the experience was to convince them that I'm going to make your life easier. Just don't completely lie to me. I know you're going to fudge some things, but tell me what's going on or I can't protect you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And that worked pretty well because I didn't know anything about the tech. I learned fairly quickly who I could trust and who I couldn't. But they needed someone to like sort of liaison between the business people and them. Mm-hmm. So that was my job for the first 6 to 8 months. And I mean, it's like the startups we deal with. We grew at maybe 5,000, 6,000% for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And so I turned into a salesperson because State Street Bank called, and they're really pissed about something this guy Matthew had done. And Matthew was dealing with Putnam, and so the CEO said to me, go down to State Street. I don't care what you do, just make them happy. And so I learned probably the first really important lesson for my life, which is really pissed off customers. If you can turn them, they're super appreciative. Mm-hmm. And so it's a counterintuitive thing, but almost like you have to create some friction in order for them to care at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I got to come in and say, listen, I don't know what the fuck Matthew did. He's an asshole, but let me just fix it. And I hadn't caused the problem, but I was like the guy that fixed it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I'm now an account manager with the State Street Bank account. And it's just classic of startups.
How much of the company did State Street represent? I mean, State Street is in the Boston financial market.
State Street is big.
It's big.
They were not. I mean, Putnam was our biggest account. That's why Matthew was not dealing with them.
Okay.
So they were 10%.
Oh, okay. All right.
They
That's great for you. That's a
great
really
for me.
healthy
It was a great
percentage
first
of the
account,
business. Yeah.
first account. And the thing that was really good about it is it was 10%, but it had not been tapped. Right?
Yeah.
There were entire buildings of State Street that no one had called on, just because we were growing so fast that no one had dealt with it. Right. And I mean, there's Putnam, Fidelity, Mass Financial, State Street, and 15 others that I can't remember, all within 4 miles. And our basic MO was an arms dealer, right? Like we would sell them a trading tool. We give you a half-second advantage over your competitors.
Yep.
And then Putnam would kick State Street Bank's ass for a month or 2 months, and then would call the rest of the group and say, like, you should really get this new tool.
Yeah.
And we can help you with that.
Right.
And so that was the basic business, and it was fun. I was 22, and my goal in life, when I graduated college, was to make $100K. And I made $100K in like the first 9 months. I thought it was going to be like 10 years.
Right.
So I was like, shit, I got to figure out
My next goal.
a new plan. I got a new plan. And then I decided probably 2 years in, so maybe 94, 95, somewhere in there, that I wanted to be CEO just because I saw Gary, the CEO, what he was doing, and I thought I can do that.
Yep.
Looking back on it, I was like an arrogant asshole that didn't know what I was talking about.
We all start that way,
Yeah,
though.
right. My wife would say that I'm that way today. So, but I went in and said to him, I think, someone could do this to me today and I'd be frustrated. But I said to him, this has been great. I've been here 2 years. It's been great. I want to be CEO. And he was probably 35.
Yeah, too young to give it up.
You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, right.
And that's fine.
Yep.
I had a non-compete like all of New England. So like I understand the non-compete, I'm just going to move wherever. Like, this is pretty easy. This has been fun. I'm going to move to San Francisco or DC or, I don't know, Chicago. I'm just going to drive somewhere and do the same thing there. So, but I'm going to be CEO this time. And I mean, it's really shocking that I actually said that. But to his credit, he knew me pretty well. He said, Vic, just go home for a week. Don't do anything stupid. And let's talk next Friday. And then we can figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I came back a week later and he said, okay, you don't have any money to speak of. Like, I thought I had all the money in the world.
Right.
But that was like $100,000.
Right, exactly.
You don't really have any money. You don't have any credit. You don't have a brand. You don't know what you're going to do. And you've never been CEO before. You don't even know what city you're going to. Why don't we actually make a plan and get organized, and then you can use our balance sheet and our money and our brand and go open an office, but maybe it won't like completely blow up. And so that sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I fought through that. I wanted to go to San Francisco, and I learned like the second lesson that he sort of boiled the frog. Like, we can go anywhere, except it changed midway through to we can go anywhere in the Eastern time zone. Because probably rightly thought that like it'll be easier for me to support you.
Yep.
And so I moved to Atlanta in maybe December 95.
Okay.
And opened an office there. And it turns out there are no financial services companies in Atlanta. And so I had to go find other companies that needed technology. Probably would have been hard. I mean, I just got into a co-working facility, and they still had phone books in. Like, got the yellow pages and just started calling people randomly. I hired this other guy, and we were just Bell South. We just called in random numbers from Bell South, and would whoever picked up start talking to them about our ability to help them bring technology in and get ahead in their job, get promoted, make a difference.
And
it's totally, I mean, just like out of the blue.
But I do think like it's so interesting how at first when I listen to that, it sounds so crazy. But then I have to remember it's 1995. No one is selling via email. No one has email.
Yeah, no one had email.
No one has email.
I had a pager.
Right. It's pagers.
Right.
There's no cell phones. And it wasn't that weird to get sold via the phone back then.
Yeah.
Now, it's still hard work. It's still cold call. But it just wasn't that weird to do it.
That, I mean, you had to sell.
You had to sell. You had to sell.
But it wasn't weird.
Mm-mm.
And it was the fucking internet.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
I'm a good salesman and I don't lack confidence, and the internet happened.
Right.
And selling software in 96, 97, 98, you could do.
Right.
Like, everyone needed an answer.
Yes.
And whoever...
And there was no establishment other than Microsoft. Like, everyone else out there was...
Microsoft and IBM.
And IBM. That's it.
IBM had a big presence in Atlanta. But, they're IBM.
Right.
And my wife's not going to like this. I did well selling better to women. And so when I would get a woman like that had budget, and this woman named Tamara, she decided, sure, I want to get ahead of my career. So come build an application for me that will help me do better. We'll pull in my team. And I pulled in people we didn't make a lot of margin on, and we killed it for her.
Yeah.
And then she did get promoted, and then other people at Bell South started saying, well, I want that.
Right.
Because Bell South had this super tight vendor list. You couldn't really sell to Bell South. So if you called the regular numbers, they'd say no.
Right.
Like, you have to use these 5 vendors.
Yep.
But if you just sort of found someone who had budget that would try to get ahead, then you could.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so we kind of built it up in a shared location. It was called HQ. There'd be WeWork today, but just kind of like you have a tiny little office, and slowly we kind of built up our presence, and then moved into our own office, and it was great. I mean, it was exactly what I wanted. I had cover, so we were venture backed, and I'd go to Boston for the board meetings. But in Atlanta, I was sort of the CEO. Now, I wasn't. There was a guy above me.
Yep.
But
so okay, you just said something that is new. I've known this story, but I didn't know this part. I didn't know the company was venture backed.
yeah, I mean, it was not a big VC that we would work with today. But it was a VC in Waltham.
Okay.
That I'd go up to and do board meetings with.
Okay. All right.
And then we got offered an all-cash deal in one of these poof roll-up ridiculous things that happen in the internet craze, where this group out of Charlotte put together 18 technology companies in maybe 98. And all in one day, they all merged and went public. And
man, it was so different. Oh my gosh.
Such a different world.
And they weren't even like related, were they?
They're
They're
related,
just all technology, right?
And it's
so
obvious
crazy
to say now, but the bankers just sold it.
Yeah.
The talent all leaves.
Yeah.
It was like they take their equity payments, and then maybe they wait for a month, and then they leave.
Right.
And so that thing happened, and a year later, not surprisingly, they weren't hitting earnings. And so instead of saying, well, we kind of screwed this up and it's not going to work, let's try to actually build something.
Right.
They decided, let's buy another 20 because that'll make it better. And we were in that second 20. And it was incredible. I mean, I didn't want to sell because it was my life.
Yeah, right. Like, what were you going to do next?
What was going to do, and it was a lot of money, but it wasn't. I didn't want the money particularly.
Yeah.
But I didn't have luckily I didn't have control, and so we sold, and then I had a year-long earn-out just to sit around figure out what I'm going to do. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, then I realized I didn't want to be a doctor. Now I've done this startup. It's been an incredible 7 years. I got to figure out what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of decided I had a year to sit there and wait for my check to come in.
Okay.
And so they brought a new guy to run the business, merged in another Atlanta company with us. So my only job was to try to keep the people there as they changed every policy and cultural thing that had kept them. But I wasn't comped that way.
Right.
I was comped based on revenue.
Right.
And so I basically had nothing to do. And so I thought a lot about what did I like about this, what didn't I like about it. And I sort of decided it seems like the VCs have a better deal. I fly up there, we have a steak dinner and whatever, chat about things, and then there's a half-day meeting, three-quarters-a-day meeting that's kind of strategy. What are we doing? Where is it headed? What are the competitors doing? What should we do differently? And that was always intellectually interesting. Sometimes I got peppered with questions, but it was intellectually interesting.
Right.
And then I'd fly back to Atlanta and sort of deal with what I call the day-to-day grind, right? As the leader, really happy customers don't get to me. Mm-hmm. And the sales guy has got that.
Yeah, that's right.
It's only the really mad customers that they elevate up.
Yes.
And so as the leader of a little kind of business, you end up dealing with just fires all day long. And I did that fine, but it seemed like the grass was greener. The VCs kind of float on this quarter-to-quarter strategy thing, and the management teams have to do all the damn work.
Right.
But I didn't have the secret finance handshake. I'd run a little company, but I was pre-med.
So unpack that, because anyone who's listening to this or watching this, unless they already know the secret finance handshake,
right.
They don't know what
you
you
have
meant
the
there.
secret handshake, you know, but if you don't, you don't.
Right. So just talk about that, the secret finance handshake.
It's such a bullshit thing, but I'll unpack it just so people can see behind the Wizard of Oz bullshit curtain. Right. So the financial industry creates acronyms and language and buzzwords, in order to sell you shit.
Right.
And a lot of those things are hard to understand from the outside. And if you want to work in finance, you sort of have to know all of that lingo in order to communicate with people. And so just, whatever, the cost of capital and the internal rate of return, and we're doing sensitivity analysis on this pricing structure. It's
like
all
that one
means
sentence.
nothing.
Yeah.
It all means nothing.
Right.
But people will say that in an interview, or they say that in a board meeting, or they say that wherever. And if you don't understand like what is bullshit and what it means, it's hard to be effective.
Right.
And so that is the friendly way to say that finance people hire people that know finance. The other way to say it is that they just hire people that look like themselves. And so most VCs either, and this is in 2000, right? So it's changed, luckily. Hopefully we're going to talk about the changing venture world.
Of course, yeah.
In 2000, there really were only two types of VCs, right? They were ex-investment bankers that were now VCs and came out of finance, or they're ex-securities lawyers that were now doing VC. And that was it. And they're all white, male, 45 to 70, because you never did VC until you had a full career in venture or securities law. So I, talked to several VCs in Atlanta and Boston, and you had to go to business school. And whether it was going to be valuable to the actual job of being a VC was not the point. Mm-hmm. You can't get a job without going to business school, and in business school you learn all the inside baseball language stuff just so you can cut through the BS of it. Mm-hmm. It's not actually used, but you can't get the job without it.
Right.
So my then girlfriend, now wife, was at Vanderbilt. And so I applied to 3 business schools. I applied to Harvard, because fucking Harvard.
Yep.
And I applied to University of Georgia, because I was in Georgia.
Yep, local.
And, I like the Bulldogs.
Yep.
And I applied to Vanderbilt. I got waitlisted at Harvard, and that just pissed me off. And I like Wendy, and so I came to Vanderbilt, got into Vanderbilt. And so I went to school at Vanderbilt, did finance and accounting, learned how all that works, but I really spent time trying to understand how the VC businesses work and trying to get a job. So I was sort of like just kind of hanging around, doing whatever I could do to meet them and understand it. And then a couple of them let me intern for no pay. And that got me sort of in the door, and I sort of fought my way to get a job.
Mm-hmm. So that's your introduction to Nashville.
Yeah, Vanderbilt.
Right.
I came to Vanderbilt.
Both for your girlfriend, now wife, and also to get the secret finance handshake.
Yes.
This is basically how you got here.
Yeah. I knew nothing about healthcare.
Yeah.
Related to Nashville.
Yeah.
I
probably didn't know much about Nashville, right?
I didn't know anything about Nashville. It's where Vanderbilt told me to come.
Right.
Right. That's it. I didn't know about the music business. I didn't know about HCA and the Healthcare Council.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people come to Nashville for Vanderbilt or for music or for HCA. And then because Nashville is great, you never leave.
Right.
So I was living in Hillsborough Village, of course, walking to school, with no real plan of staying year one. In the summertime, I worked at, what's the place in Houston? Can't believe I'm blanking on that. Enron. So I worked at Enron for my internship.
You and Nick Holland.
Did Nick work at Enron?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I need to talk to Nick about that.
Yeah, you guys need to talk about
I was in risk management at Enron.
You and Nick Holland.
Right when it cratered.
Dude, you and Nick were both there. Okay. You guys need to talk about that.
So I was there in the summer, and then came back, and of course, Enron blew up. So I got an offer to work in the venture group at Enron, but it didn't exist anymore.
All right.
And I decided Nashville's great. My wife had a job here, and we got married in that summer. So I'm going to work hard to stay here. But that was the extent of the planning. It wasn't like Nashville's going to blow up and be a great place to be a healthcare VC. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of, dumb luck or trying to figure it out.
So how did you end up getting a job at Massey Birch? Because you're not from here. You don't know anybody from here. You're a Yankee.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
The Massey Birch guys were like ultimate insider.
Yeah, dude, that doesn't seem like
they don't even talk to anyone except at Bellmead Country Club.
Right.
Yeah, so that's exactly what they were like. I'm just like a pushy asshole. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I was working for free, right? And hanging around there. One of their partners wanted to expand the firm. And so he was supportive. And then in general, everyone is maybe not lazy, but happy for other people to help.
Yeah.
Right. So I was good at Excel. I was good at, kind of pivot tables and macros and not hard stuff, but hard stuff for a 60-year-old white guy.
Totally.
In 2001. And so I was doing due diligence and financial modeling in a way that they had never seen.
Right.
Okay, so one of them, he showed he had a slide ruler. I had never seen a slide ruler. I haven't seen one since. He would move the fucking slide ruler around. And he was way smarter than me because he could do things in his head like sensitivity analysis. But
right.
I said to him, well, why don't we just use Excel for that? And then we don't have to be using a slide ruler. But it was so crazy. I had to intentionally delay showing them things. Right. So they'd say, model this financial projection. And the first time I came back, the next day and here.
Yeah. Right.
And they're blown away.
Right.
You must have stayed up all night.
Right.
I'm I just really wanted to prove my worth. He was 45 minutes. It's not anything. But if you don't understand macros or a pivot table, it looks
software.
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I started, making it seem like it takes longer.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm working on it. There's a lot to do. And then I bring it back. And so after I graduated, I was in a bunch of deals.
Okay.
And so I had helped them do maybe 3 or 4 investments.
Okay.
I had done all the due diligence. And I was helping them look smart at board meetings and be better at what they do. And so I sort of weaseled my way into a very low-paying job, but I was in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I was an associate. I think I made $60K in 2001. No carry, no anything.
Yeah, no.
But I got a card that said venture capital, Massey Birch, senior associate or something like that. And no one knew that I didn't make any money, to my wife. And then I was able to travel. They gave me a travel budget. So I could travel around and go look at deals. And that was great. Yeah. I just felt like I'm now a VC. And it doesn't matter what else I am, which is their gopher and their modeling Sherpa. But I can be at a conference saying like, yeah, we're doing deals and build my brand, like associated with the Massey Birch brand. And the Massey Birch brand was great.
And how old are you?
I was 30.
That's really young.
Maybe 31.
Yeah, I mean, that's super young to be able to walk around back then and be part of a VC in the South. I mean, it's not like the Northeast or San Francisco where, it might not have been that big a deal. I mean, to be able to get in and have that card, that's pretty good access.
It's just like putting your foot in the door so it doesn't get slammed, and then like slowly like worming your way into like, then you're in the room.
Yeah.
And then once I was in the room, like, I mean, every Monday the VCs talk about the deals. So like I got to hear all the really smart, wise, rational things that they brought to bear. I mean, they knew healthcare. Like I had never heard of healthcare, but they were really insiders. So they knew reimbursement and hospitals and managing doctors and how all of that stuff worked. I didn't know any of that. I knew software. And so a lot of the stuff they were talking about in the Monday meetings were great. And then a lot of stuff is just like human nature. Deals get killed for stupid stuff. Like, I don't know, this guy was late to the meeting. Or, I lost money 4 years ago and the guy kind of looked the same as this guy. And so I just, fuck it, let's not do it. Or whatever. Or like the senior guy doesn't even understand.
Right.
And so like it's a brilliant deal using like a data aggregation play. I was super excited about it, and the senior guy he didn't understand it. And so he killed it just because he wanted to do a deal that he didn't get.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a bunch of learning on like what makes a difference and also just how stuff gets done at a VC and then I sort of pushed my way up to be a junior partner. They were going to gear up to raise another fund. So they made me partner, and I got to do 3 deals to sort of prepare ourselves to raise money.
Yep.
And that was great because being able to do a deal is a different thing than being an associate, right? And so running that process, which is hard, about having the meeting before the meeting. So like on Monday, I knew what everyone else was doing. And it's sort of like, you have to build momentum around the deals because it's competitive for capital. We had $75 million. Everyone wants to do their deals.
Right.
And they didn't really want the new guy doing too many. So you had to try to like make them feel like it was their idea. Anyway, so there's all that like subtle stuff that's just sales, but it's sales in a different world. I didn't raise money those first 5 years because we had a fund. And then we went out to raise money, and I was super focused on it because I think that's the power position in venture. Like if you can raise money, that's it.
That's it.
So I was really trying to build that capacity. And the 2 older guys, they were too rich and old and didn't care. And so I like fought through it for maybe 18 months. But eventually they came to me and said, we're just going to hunt and fish and we're not going to do this. And so that was not my balance sheet or my age, but I understand that. So they taught me a ton, and doing investment in healthcare tech is incredible, right? It's so far behind. Like I could do things that we were doing in the 90s, and hospital systems thought they were new.
Right.
In 2000, they think it's new today.
Right.
But in 2005, it was new. So you almost have to like gear back things like less than you could do.
Yeah.
So anyway, I started to learn about the model could be changed maybe like 05, 06, and started experimenting with little things that told me like the innovation in venture has been very low or non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to stop at Solidus, like trying to do an evergreen fund with towns. It wasn't structured well, but that was the first experiment. And then we of course built the real thing that's killing it now.
Yeah. So I mean, let's just talk about like where you were and you said you started to see that the model could be changed. You talk about 05 and 06. You and I met. I guess it was probably 08. It's probably when we actually first like sat down and had that breakfast or whatever. But what were you seeing in 05 and 06 that made you think that the venture capital model could change? And then what do you mean when you say that the venture capital model could change? I mean, obviously, it has changed dramatically. We now have Kickstarter, AngelList, accelerators all over the place, but let's go back to 2005 when it was just the standard VC, and that was really it. I mean, Y Combinator on paper existed back then, but nobody really knew that.
Right.
It was too early. So, like, what were you seeing that led you to believe that the venture capital model could change?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was seeing the inefficiencies and the problems more than I was seeing the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the first couple of years, it's an apprenticeship. Is like I was trying to learn what the hell to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the first couple of years is learning. And so maybe 01, 02, 03, I'm not doing anything except trying to like understand how not to screw it up.
Right.
But then after you have done it enough, I mean, you and I are both the same. Like I look at things and I have a blessing and a curse where like I want to know why do we do it that way?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem that effective. And the Massey Birch guys were great in that they were so established,
right,
that they, particularly on the inside, they weren't hiding anything. So like a lot of times it was just like, fuck, I don't know. Mr. Massey started doing that in 75 and always seemed to work.
Right.
And that was like the
answer.
That was the answer. And so I started saying, well, could I try to do something different? And for the most part, if it didn't affect them, they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, the example that led to our breakfast pretty directly is I started doing what I called no calls. Right? So, Massey Birch in, 03 or 04 had been in business since the 70s.
Okay.
8 or 9 funds, lots of deals, thousands of pitches.
Mm-hmm.
We had never said no to anyone, ever. And so I asked the senior partner, why do we never say no? It feels like just kind to let's tell these people
right,
we're not going to do it.
Right.
And I don't mean like you can then counterpunch me. It's just like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
They'll stop calling me.
Right.
Like, I was like really just like, can I just like clear these people out of my voicemail and inbox?
Yeah.
And I probably told you a story, but he said, well, there's the option value. We're going to give up the option value.
Right.
And so just because I'm an asshole, I went back and searched for like a deal that we had done after it had lost momentum. And so the basic fantasy is this company is like bumping along, we don't do it, then they land a big contract, and they would never call us if we had said no, but because we haven't, now we can do it.
Right.
And I didn't think that was real, and it turns out we had never picked up that option. So in the history of the firm.
Right.
And so I went back to Duck, his name's Duck, back to Duck, and just a quick aside on Duck, he's got the lion on, like a fucking lion on the floor. And a Cape buffalo and animals everywhere. And he's like, I said, I don't think the option's that valuable. Like, we've never picked it up. I think the brand value of us actually just communicating might be more valuable.
Right.
And so his response is, well, if you want to fucking talk to these people, you can do it, but I don't want to talk to them. And so I think part of the reason was there's this fantasy option value thing, but part of the reason is just like it's just awkward.
Right. It's awkward.
And so I started like sort of carving out Monday from like 3 to 6. I just call everyone and say no.
Yeah.
So, typically Monday morning we meet and we're not doing these deals. And so I started calling people and either talking to them or leaving a message. And it's not a discussion. It's more just like, this is why we're not doing it.
It's a decision.
Yeah, this is our decision.
Right, it's a decision.
What I found is that the entrepreneurs, it's their job to try to counterpunch.
Yeah.
But as soon as they understand that I'm not really interested in their feedback,
right,
then it becomes informative and valuable. And I started getting referrals because I'd give them an answer. Mm-hmm. And you may not love the answer, but, yes is probably the best answer, but a fast no is pretty good.
Yeah.
And so that was valuable, and my belief today is that you still have the option value. Like if I say to you, I'm worried about your ability to sort of maintain margins as the company grows, and then you solve that, fine, come back and tell me.
Yeah.
And I may or may not buy it, but at least you know what to come back with.
Right. And the real option is not the company, it's the person.
Yeah, that person.
That's the real option.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, like,
that's what happened with us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you had a very passionate idea to do Remarkable Wit.
Yeah, it's my first business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a good idea that was not a venture scale idea.
Yeah, and I didn't even know
what I said
I didn't even know what
exactly,
venture scale was.
Right.
I wrote about this.
Yeah, and so I agree. The option of me saying to you in a hopefully fairly respectful way, but also a clear way, is not something the Massey Birch can do. Mm-hmm. And probably this, and this are reasons why I don't think it's going to work. And I'm sure you didn't like it, but you absorbed it and thought about how you could counter it or learn from it.
Yeah,
and then I just wasn't a complete asshole that strung you along and never said anything.
No. I think that this entire episode, and I think a lot of what we try to do, is educate entrepreneurs about the venture business, because most entrepreneurs don't understand the venture business. Yeah. It's very, very opaque. It's hidden behind lots of acronyms and secret handshakes. Right. And it's actually very simple at the end of the day. It's a business just like any other business, but it's not positioned that way. And so entrepreneurs come in thinking like it's their job to get you to believe something, when the reality is, if the entrepreneur's business doesn't fit your investment thesis,
I'm never going to do it.
You're not going to do it. Right, exactly. And that's sort of the end. And there are still entrepreneurs out there who don't understand that. I talk to them all the time. It's just venture even today in 2020 is still pretty mystical.
Right, and I think that's intentional.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, they are the gatekeepers of a road that you don't have to drive down.
Right.
And so, in order to try to protect some value for that role, they put a bunch of mysticism and robes and smoke and mirrors around it, mm-hmm. where if they actually said, here's what we do, what they do is kind of a commodity.
Right.
So
that's right.
We provide capital after you're already $5 million in sales and profitable and don't need it.
That's right.
And so if they really said that and put that on their website, who the fuck would ever invest in that?
Right.
And why would I bring a deal to you? So they have to put stuff around it so that it protects the value for as long as possible.
Right.
I'm not that interested in that. I'd rather let's create some new way to provide value. And that allows me to not be opaque and trying to hide stuff.
So where are we today? Because we could talk about the last 5 years, but I feel like we both talk about that a lot.
Yeah,
people can read that. That's whatever. Where are we? And when I say we, I mean, where are you? Where is the overall market today? One of the important things, I guess, to say is you and I partnered up, and you've basically gone back to being an entrepreneur. So you're in venture capital, but you're back to being the CEO. It's been that way for 5 years now, 5+ years.
Right. I mean, we are an entrepreneurial business that happens to be in the investment business.
Right. Exactly. And just talk about where we are with respect to the venture business broadly.
Where our society is?
Yeah, because I mean I think it's interesting. I mean, you know, the public markets are really interesting right now. You know, the growing interest and access to venture opportunities for the average citizen is changing. There's all sorts of things that are changing, but yet and still the establishment hasn't changed that much, right? Like where the majority of the money sits and how the decisions are made hasn't changed that much.
Yeah, the establishment always maintains control for a longer time than we would expect it to. Mm-hmm. But I think that the financial markets broadly are being dramatically impacted by the internet and massive data systems and technology and machine learning, and things like high frequency trading, and there's massive impact on the financial markets broadly. The VC space or the private equity space lags that. Mm-hmm. The funds are mostly 10 years in length, and so when you raise a fund, you have job security for 10 years. And so even though the world is changing, it's a 10-year lag before like a VC loses its job.
Yeah.
And so everything is sort of in slow motion.
Yeah.
Right. So like I see where it's going, you see where it's going, but there's a bunch of zombie VCs that like have a fund that's 5 years old. They got 5 more years, whatever, making $400K and sitting around with like a priest outfit on, saying that they're doing great work. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're in this process of pretty massive change, but it's going to take another 10 years before like it's all different.
Yeah. It's funny. I've never heard you say that. It makes all the sense in the world that like that is one of the main reasons why the VC world is so slow, and also because at least our foundry model raises every year. It's like we change every year.
Yeah. I mean, we've had.
I mean, like I guess I've intuitively known that, but like not. I don't think I've ever like explicitly thought, oh, that every year thing we do means we iterate every year, whereas everyone else is iterating every 5 to 7 to 10 years. Like literally that alone.
I mean, the aggressive Silicon Valley firms will raise a fund every 4 years.
Right.
And so, and they feel fast about that.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Jumpstart Foundry is changing dramatically every year. And so in 6 years, we've had 6 iteration cycles where like a middle America VC would have had 1.
Right.
West Coast would have, maybe 2,
right.
1.5.
Right,
2.
1.5, yeah.
And so just the learning and the iteration and the cumulative sort of exponential value of that, I think is really powerful. The other thing that you're suggesting that I think is intentional is we don't have any VCs that work for us.
Right.
Like I'm trying to escape it.
Yeah. I mean, but you're the only traditional VC in our company.
Right. So we have 11 people. Ain't nobody know the old way.
Right.
And that's because we don't need that baggage, right? Like we're bringing information, access, science, fast iteration, much more like entrepreneurial ethos to the business of venture. And most VCs and most people they don't think like that. And so it's easier for us to train someone who comes out of the startup world about here's how we want to do investing than to try to change the attitude of a VC.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think it's like everything in life. Like it's going to be slow, and then over.
Yeah.
And I want it to be over fast, but the massive amounts of capital protect the establishment for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe just talk a little bit about healthcare. Obviously, that's it feels like an oxymoron because health is obviously one of the biggest things going on in the world, especially today with coronavirus sort of every day hitting, our notifications. But we are exclusively in the health space, healthcare, health and wellness, sort of all things health globally. That's our space. Talk about where you see that going. Just in over the next 5 years. Let's just call it 5 years.
I mean, I think that health is one of the three things that the planet has to figure out in the next 5 years. And so what you and I can impact is health, how we take care of people, how we assist them at taking care of themselves, how we do that more effectively. And our society globally, but in Nashville, in the Southeast, in the country, in the world, we have to figure out health, energy, and water. Mm-hmm. And if we don't figure those things out, we're not going to survive. Mm-hmm. So to me, that means we will figure it out. But there's a lot of challenges. And so what I got excited about is taking the science of innovation and entrepreneurship and applying it to venture for the purpose of impacting health. And I want to make a difference and help people live healthier and have more enjoyable, longer lives. And I want to make a huge pile of money. Mm-hmm. And I think the fun thing about health is you can do both those things at the same time. And so we want to work with entrepreneurs that have that same kind of ethos of making a difference and making money and affecting people's life. And those entrepreneurs need a lot of assistance. They need money, but money is the least important thing we give. We give them support, and we help them navigate things, and we teach them, here's how to talk to the old-fashioned VCs, and here's a VC that you can trust. And you probably need money from both sides, mm-hmm. but you need to treat them differently. Mm-hmm. And health is incredibly impactful, and it's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because people make poor choices. And sometimes the unhealthy path is a lot easier. Mm-hmm. And our institutions, hospitals, insurance companies, the government, large employers, they are not always incented to deliver the best outcome. Mm-hmm. And so we have all of these things coming simultaneously, and yet there's no other market that I'd want to be in.
Okay, you just lined right into the very last question I wanted to ask. So we've been doing this a little over 5 years, and if you take sort of our nights and weekends experimental time, it's been a decade now that we've been working on all this stuff, and we've had a lot of fun, and we've created a bunch of stuff, and we've had some wins, but we've also had some very, very hard moments. Yeah. Just as like a final note, a lot of the people who listen to this show either are entrepreneurs or aspire to be entrepreneurs. You clearly had, I would say, opportunities to go a safer route kind of throughout your life. I mean, the Harvard thing or you could have gone to a more traditional finance thing where you didn't have to sort of do all these iterations. And, we are here fighting the good fight as entrepreneurs, but working on stuff that I think every day we wake up and we're never like questioning what we're doing with our lives.
Right.
Like what would you say to someone who's listening to this, who's thinking about doing it just from your own experience, just your own words, your own experience, not like necessarily advice, but just how these last 5 years have played out for you. And when you think about the next 5 years, how would you speak about it?
I mean, it's the best thing I've ever done. My wife and kids, I guess I haven't put my wife and kids in, but despite that, professionally, maybe it's the best thing I've ever done. And that's also the hardest thing. It is not a choice to be made where it's the easy path. I think you're absolutely right. Every decision I've made has been impact, and I aspire to make a difference. I'm not really worried about the check in the mailbox next Friday. And I understand I have responsibilities. I got to pay the mortgage and pay stuff, but like that doesn't get me up in the morning. It's like making a difference. And it's my advice to entrepreneurs is it's a calling. Like, and that sounds like a BS thing, but what I mean by that is like it's not rational. Like you shouldn't do it. It doesn't make sense. You're going to take more risk and you're likely to make less money and have more problems. And there's going to be times, and we've had this where like we have challenges and I don't know what to do, and there's no fucking manual.
Right.
Like, there's no thing to say like, oh, turn to this chapter and this is what you do.
Right.
There's a bunch of stories and things to try to glean from, but there's no like clear thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is hard. And at the same time, I was like this. If you are like up in the morning at 3 a.m. feeling like I can do this and it will be impactful to the world and make a difference and it'll be fun. And I don't mean it'll be easy, but like it'll be fun to like running a marathon or climbing a mountain is fun. Like the challenge makes it more rewarding. If you like can't sleep because you have this idea and you want to try it, then, you know, the question is like on your deathbed, if you didn't give it your best effort, are you going to be regretful? And for me, the answer was yes. Like I think I can reconfigure how innovation is conceived, brought to market, funded, and scaled, and do that with a whole bunch of entrepreneurs that could really impact how health is developed. And that could be really fun and really impactful. And it almost doesn't matter. Like if you have that calling, it doesn't matter if it works or not. Like I felt like I had to try to do it. And that means I need to push through the challenges because I have this faith that it is important to do. It doesn't mean that I have the answers. Like a lot of times I don't have the answers and no one has the answers, and you and I have to like figure out, okay, how can we survive this and keep the calling alive? And I think part of what we should do now is say that like on your show, we don't have to put as much like show
Right.
what I would say to someone else.
Right.
So
no, we don't.
You and I have this facade about everything Vic and Marcus touch is golden because we curate a press image, but that's not real.
No.
That's the fake facade thing. And obviously
That's not the tears in the ramen.
Right, exactly. It's not tears in the ramen. It's not me lying on the floor like shaking. What the fuck am I gonna do? And those things happen. Like
Yeah.
I was on the ground, like I have all this responsibility, and it's not myself. It's like people that came to work for me in our portfolio and investors that trusted us, and I didn't want to let them down. And there were times, and I'm sure there'll be times in the future where I didn't know like what direction to go. Mm-hmm. And that's like part of what it is to do an entrepreneurial thing. And I think that on my deathbed, I can say to myself, which is the only person you answer on any deathbed, like, I really tried to do this. And obviously my grandkids will be happier and richer if it's successful. But sort of it doesn't matter. Like either
Right.
way, it's better to have done it. And if you're trying to do it for like a quick flip and because you saw someone on Shark Tank make a bunch of money, you shouldn't do it. Like there's easier ways to make money than this.
Yeah. That was perfect, man.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Peace.